ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावनीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। So namaste to all. There was a question that somebody had actually asked last month, and I was supposed to answer it during one of these satsangas, but I just kept forgetting. So I'm going to read out the person's question, and there was also a follow-up question to the original question. So what he asked was, um, Atma is never the known; it is an absolute seer. Just as an eye cannot know itself, so also Atma cannot know itself. If it knows itself, then it will be Anatma. So just as an individual is Atma with limited intelligence, Ishvara is also Atma with limitless knowledge. But then also Ishvara's intellect falls within Maya. How can a conscious Maya intellect know itself as Brahman and give knowledge of the Vedas? So this is a good question. It's a deep question. It's really in the heart of Vedanta. So I figured we'll start with that and then we'll get into the text proper. So this Atma Anatma Viveka, you start off with that. You typically start off the teaching with Atma Anatma Viveka because it's very abstract to go into the self as being the self of both the knower and the known. It is, we can say that right now, but it's just an idea until it is well understood. It is just, very conceptual and abstract. So typically, if you look at any Prakarana Grantha, take Tattvabodha, then what they define Viveka as, they say Atma, Anatma, Viveka. No? And this understanding that what is Anatma, what is subject to change, that is not the self. And that which is the changeless, that which is, in all three states of existence, Jagrat, Sushupti, that which is the witness to all of these states, you refer to that as the Atma. Sakshi Traya, Avastha Traya Sakshi. That is one way to start. It is not the end. It is not the vision of Vedanta. That is the place to start. Alternatively, if you look at the Drishya Viveka, very similar, right? Here we talked about Anatma, Atma. Now we talk about Drik and Drishya. There's a Viveka there also. Viveka here just means a sort of discrimination. Not as people understand discrimination to be, but here, to see what something is as opposed to something else. That is the discrimination we are talking about. So in Drik Drishya Viveka, you take an object and you say, okay, these pairs of spectacles, it's an object. And I am the knower of the known object. Drishya, Drik. But now this Drik is a composite. No, I am a composite as an individual. It's not, we're not talking about the Atma yet, because what sees these glasses are the eyes. And so the eyes become the seer and the object becomes the seen. The spectacles become the seen. Now, that vision that is captured by the eyes, the sense of sight, the eyes here become the seen and the mind becomes the seer. The mind is the seer. And then ultimately you talk about Sakshi, that in the presence of the Sakshi, the vrittis, the thoughts of the mind, become the seen, and then the Sakshi is the seer. So that is how you do this Drik, Drishya, Viveka Prakriya. But this is also not the end of it. In fact, this is the starting point of Vedanta. This is not where you stop. Because if you stop here, we still immerse ourselves into a world of duality. That's a problem. Because suppose I say that there's a Sakshi who is seeing my thoughts, but then there can be another Sakshi who is seeing your thoughts, and a third Sakshi who is seeing somebody else's thoughts. And this way, there could be infinite, as many jivas there are, that many Sakshis there could be. And so, therefore, there are infinite Atmas, one can conclude. But that is why I say we don't stop there. The reason for these prakriyas is to first create a distance, a conceptual distance in our vision from those things which are subject to change, so that I don't take myself to be the entity that undergoes change, birth, death, life, crisis, whatever, all of these things. I am not the one who's subject to those things. I am the witness to all of these changes that I perceive, that I witness in my life. So that creates an immediate distance, and there's a certain vairagya that comes along with it. And then, you build upon that foundation. One second, sorry. So then the next part is that one has to understand that the Sakshi that I refer to is not the self as the individual Sakshi, but we are referring to that in the presence of which every single Jiva, as though, takes on the status of a Sakshi, becomes a knower. So here, when I say Sakshi, let's look at it as a knower, somebody who is a Jnata. So there's a Jnata Jnaya division. Knower, known. Object, subject. So if I am the subject, my status of being a subject is enlivened in the light of that consciousness, which is Atma, in the light of which every single Jiva takes up the status of a knower. Every single Jiva takes up this Jnata title in the light of that consciousness, which is the truth of every single Jiva. It is the adhisthana of every single Jiva as its very basis, as the very existence, self-revealing existence alone. Everything that is there is a name and form. Whatever you can perceive is a name and form, Nama Rupa. The basis of every Nama Rupa, or the substantive of every Nama Rupa, is the nameless, formless self. Just as the substantive of every wave is the featureless, attributeless water. So this Atma, in the presence of the self, the substance of which alone is the self, in the presence of that, every single jiva as though takes on the status of an individual sakshi, as though there's an individual sakshi. But when we refer to sakshi, we have to take a step back from my limited experience as a limited, confined, individualized sakshi to the sakshi which is the sakshi of it all. In the presence of it all, every individual takes on the sakshiness, the sakshihood, the witnessing individual self. Okay. Huh.
Are there different are different atmas different, or is there some, like the ocean water that comprises the waves? There is an a consciousness that connects everything.
There is only Atma. There is not one Atma or two Atmas or multiple Atmas. There is only Atma. Atma Evam. That alone is Atma. There is nothing other than the Atma. Everything else is an appearance having its basis in the Atma alone. For example, I'll just give a basic, udaharan here. Like if you look at this phone, what part of this phone is really the phone? If I, take away the screen, if I take away the camera, if I take away the keypad, if I take away the different parts of the phone, where do you point that you call this the phone? You refer to the phone as a conglomerate. It's a composite object. It's not very one place that I can point and say this is the phone. It is a composite object. Likewise, if I look at my body, it is a composite body. There's no single part that you can say, okay, this is Prashant, but this whole, you can say, panoply of objects that have come together give the appearance that there is somebody called Prashant who's talking, who's comprised of countless cells, who's comprised of a certain set of pranas, who's comprised of Sukshma Sharira, Sthula Sharira, this Sharira, that Sharira, all of these things. It's a composite. So when we talk about any mithya object, it is nothing but a composite object. There is no such thing as a fundamental object in mithya, because anything that you point towards will be broken into its constituent parts. So for example, if one says that, okay, Prashant is constituted of a bunch of cells, oh, but then the cell itself is constituted of different cellular organelles, right? You have the nucleus and the chromosomes and this and that and all of those DNA and whatnot. So many things are there. That if you point and you say, okay, DNA must be the substratum, then no, no, no. DNA is also made of different things. No, you have the phosphate backbone and you have all of these other things attached to it. Then you'll say, okay, no, that must be basic, no? But then even the molecules are not basic. Maybe the atom is basic. Nah, the atom cannot be basic because that's comprised of protons, electrons, neutrons. Neutrons must be basic, no? That's comprised of quarks as well. That must be basic, no? Maybe somebody will say it's made of strings. Then somebody else will come up with a new theory. No matter what you point towards, it's always going to be a composite. But you can't reduce it to anything because whatever you reduce it to, it will reveal one more object behind it, behind it, behind it, behind it, behind it. And then ultimately, when you say that, you know, you abstract it further and you say that what is that which you cannot reduce any further, where does it stop? It stops at existence consciousness, which is the Atma. That is the Atma. And this Atma is the basis of everything. But everything else is only an appearance of a name and form because everything is an appearance because it is a composite that appears to be the whole. I, as a composite of parts, appear to be an individual. But then you can break me down into multiple parts, and that part itself will be broken into multiple parts, and so on and so forth. And there is nothing that you can point towards and say, okay, this is definitively it. And that is the nature of mithya, that you cannot say categorically anything about it which is a truth. Yeah,
So, Prashantji, if that is the case, if that substratum is existence consciousness and it's common, that alone exists, then why does Krishna Bhagavan say Uddharet Atmanatmanam? It seems like there is something more individualistic, or a component of that we are somehow affecting by our actions or something like that.
yes. It's the usage of the word Atma because the Atma can also, in common parlance, refer to the individual also. So in certain contexts, he is referring to Atma as, for example, I'll say that I am drinking water, but I is Atma, so the Atma drinks water. But the Atma does not drink water. Atma is, is Satchitananda. But then I here in common parlance, I'm referring to myself as I, as the body, not as Brahman or as Atma. So that, one, and it has a nice flow to it. That, what do you call it? What is that? In English also you have, um, I forget what it's called, but there's a certain figure of speech in English, not allegory. Sorry, I forget. But you know what I'm saying. Where certain consonants are repeated or certain vowels are repeated, and then it just
Alliteration.
alliteration. That's right. So this is a form of alliteration. So it's very beautiful. It flows. But otherwise, if you replace Atma word there with Jiva, it will not sound very nice. That the Jiva raises oneself by oneself. So it's just the usage of the Atma. But when we talk about the Atma is Satchitananda. The Atma is not an individual. The Atma is not an individual Sakshi, but the Atma is the Sakshi of all Sakshis. It is the Drik behind the Driks. It is the light behind the light. That's why na tatra Surya Bhati na Chandra Tarakam. And then all of these examples, it is compared to light, but not in the form of physical light that we perceive, but light in the presence of which everything comes to light. Everything is lit up in the presence of that light. The only difference here is that one ought not to perceive the Atma as a physical light form that is reflecting upon things, because then that creates a separation itself. Rather, Atma is both the basis of the object and at the same time, it is that which is self revealing. But there are certain constituents or certain configurations which don't enable it to take on the status of a knower. So, for example, let's say you have certain chemicals or elements like phosphorus, which have phosphorescence, but not every single one of them will have it. Right, so that way, it's made of the same sort of components. You can say that everything's basis is Atma only, but there are certain constituents which are more capable of taking on or reflecting, I use it in quotes, consciousness. And so one such conglomerate is what we refer to as a Sukshma Shrira. That in the presence of Atma, and when I say the presence, doesn't mean that it's surrounding the Sukshma Shrira, it is its very basis. But this particular configuration is able to reflect the Chit Swarupa of the Atma in a way that turns an individual into an individual knower. And so that duality of knower and known is created because the truth of the known object also, the truth of this is also Atma, and the truth of the Sukshma Sharira that is residing within this body is also the Atma. But the Sukshma Sharira is able to reflect the Atma in a peculiar, again, don't take it literally because you don't reflect the Atma because it's not something that you can transact with, but it's able to harness the Chit Swarupa of the Atma in a way that makes it a conscious being. And so I appear to be an individual conscious being, and I refer to these glasses as not conscious objects. But the truth of this and the truth of this is consciousness itself, and that is the Atma. So that is why we start with that prakriya of division, but ultimately one has to resolve the division because otherwise we still remain in Dvaita. But in Advaita, one has to say that the truth of the knower and the truth of the known, the truth of the subject and the truth of the object, that is the Atma. And in that, there is no distinction because both knower and known are mithya categories. And only two categories which are separate from one another, as though, are able to interact with each other. But when you deepen the inquiry, you find that that separation does not truly exist. And a very simple example for that, a beautiful example, is a dream example. In a dream, two people are having the same conversation with each other, but it is nothing but you. But now you appear as two separate people in the dream, but it is one person. So, same way, the Atma appears as though it is different individuals, but it is only the one singular, non dual, one without a second Atma. It is only Atma. There's nothing other than the Atma. So,
How do we reconcile the different individuals, the different body? This is Prashant, this is Shrikant, and so on, in the light of this common substratum.
the configuration. The configuration differs. For example, my Sukshma Sharira may have a certain configuration in the terms of ragas and dveshas. Somebody else's Sukshma Sharira, they have different configuration in terms of their ragas and dveshas and their baggage of karma. So, for example, if you have a field with many pots filled with water, and then there is this light, which is the sunlight, one sun that's shining upon all of these pots. Each pot may have a sun within it, appearing as an individual sun. But depending on the color of the water, one could look like a blue sun, one could look like a red sun, one could look like a pink sun, one could look like a very pure sun without any coloration. So, like in that example, the pure mind would be like Antakarana Shuddhi, somebody with a very pure Antakarana, and this Malin Antakarana would be like it's a very black looking sun because very dark because there's a lot of black color in there. And then somebody else who's very agitated, maybe like a red color sun there, like red for agitation and black for dullness and tamas. So all of these gunas that are playing out in the Antakarana give the flavor, the personality, the character, and all of our proclivities in life. That is what differentiates it. The different gunas that are interacting, the colors of the different Antakaranas, so to speak.
But physically also we are different, right? So it is not. Is the physical attributes also an effect of the gunas and the karmas? And
Yes.
okay,
Because the physical body is a result of punya karma and pap karma mishran. The combination of punya and pap karma together form the physical body, though it is predominantly punya karma. It is predominantly punya karma because it's a manusya gati. It is not some Tyrian or some creature that lives and dies without thinking. So
right.
it's predominantly punya karma, but somebody could have genetic hereditary issues, somebody could have some disease, somebody could have they may not have a good stature, they may not have good health, they may not have whatever. So there are there's a pap karma component associated with it also because nobody's body is perfect or free of disease or whatever. So there are all of these components that are mixed together, and those are also subservient to one's karma that has been accumulated. So the karma that is performed by the jiva determines the body type of the jiva as well, and not just the body type, but even the types of experiences you will have. Because the first experience that every person has is experiencing through the body, and so the body experiences the first experience, and then the world is experienced after the body is experienced. So both the experience of the body and how the body is structured, and the environment within which one is born and raised and whatever, all of this is a result of karma together. So the karma is what differentiates different bodies and different minds. And the karmas are performed by the jivas. The karma is performed by the one who thinks that they are performing karma. But once one recognizes that I am not a karta, because again, going back to the conglomerate example, Prashant is lifting this phone. Where is the Prashant that you're indicating? Is it this body? The body is inert. It is jada. It is made of only cells and what tissues and whatnot. So how can the tissues lift up the phone? So then you ask questions, and then there is no good answer for it. Then you are led to paradoxes. Then you say, okay, maybe Prashant's mind is picking up the phone, but the mind is just existing in fugue state. It's not really having hands and feet, and also something is there. So this whole conglomerate that one is referring to by the Nama Rupa called Prashant is the one that is performing these actions. But then what is that Prashant? What is that thing? What is that entity that is doing the karma? Who is the karta? There's no good answer to that. And there's no good answer to that because factually there is no karta. But one takes this conglomerate to be the karta, and that delusion is what gives rise to kartutva bhava, and that delusion also gives rise to the karma, which itself is a delusion. Because the karma model applies to the karmi. Once the person has given up karma, and I don't mean given up in the sense that I don't do any actions, more like actions are being done, I am not the one who's performing them. That is the akarta. That is the Naishkarmya Siddhi that Shastra talks about. So this Naishkarmya Siddhi is to take oneself not as a doer, not as a knower, not as an actor, not as a sufferer or an enjoyer or any of those things, but to see oneself as that in the presence of which everything is being done without being a participant in any of these actions. I do not participate in any of these actions because the I that I recognize myself to be is the witness consciousness not only to this Sharira, but the witness consciousness to everyone. And therefore, it cannot be individual. There can be no individualization in the self. The moment we call somebody an individual, we are referring to the jiva with its own bag of karma, punya, pap, and all of these things, not the atma. So that now the question, the follow-up question that was asked to this question is Ishvara's intellect also falls within Maya. How can conscious Maya intellect know itself as Brahman? So that is not true. Ishvara's intellect falls within Maya. It sounds like Ishvara is subservient to Maya. Rather, the correct way to look at it is Maya is the sum total of all that there is that one is able to perceive as an object or not able to perceive an object. Anything that has a certain guna associated with it is in the realm of Maya. Whatever is known and whatever is unknown and whatever cannot be known, all of that is Maya. And Maya is also Mithya. Now, has Ishvara's basis in Atma, just as the Jiva has the basis in Atma. The wave has its basis in water. The ocean also has its basis in water. Water is the truth of the ocean. Water is the truth of the wave. Water is the only truth, and there is nothing other than water is also the truth. Because from the standpoint of the ocean, there is an ocean. From the standpoint of the waves, there are waves and there is also an ocean. From the standpoint of water, there is no such thing as wave, nor is there an ocean because there is only water. It is a perspective, it is a drishti. You have something called pratiti, which is, we had spoken once about this, and it is an appearance. What appears is the pratiti. Very important. This is how you will cultivate, I'll cultivate, we'll all cultivate this jnana bhava in our lives. It is not by, as some people say, oh, I have to be the sakshi. No, that is not the right way to look at it. Because suppose you say you have to be the sakshi, who is this you that you're referring to? Then again, you're referring to it as an individual, that I am the individual sakshi. And what you're basically saying is that I am the, purified antakarana. That level one is reaching. That is not correct. I am the reflected consciousness. That is also not correct, as some teachers talk about. The correct way to look at it is I am not the sakshi. Rather, I am that in the presence of which every jiva takes on the sakshi sense. That I is that which lends the sakshi rupa to every single jiva, if that makes sense. In the presence of the self, every individual jiva as though becomes a sakshi, as though becomes a doer, as though becomes a doer, and as though becomes an object. That also we should not forget. We should not reduce the self only to a subject, because the self is also the self of the object. Subject object duality cannot exist. In the dream, you have a dream mountain, you have dream food, you have dream stones, you have dream rocks, you have dream people. Are the dream people more subjectified than the dream objects? Is there more reality to one versus the other? No, they are having their basis in the mind alone. The mind is appearing both as a dream object and the dream subject. That is the nature of the mind in the dream. Same way, the Atma is appearing both as the object and the subject based on the avidya of the subject to treat itself as a subject and classify everything else as an object. The avidya of the subject makes itself, calls itself the subject. Due to the avidya, the subject treats oneself as a subject, not as the Atma. Because the moment I say I am the subject or I am the witness, there is something else different from me that I have to witness. But then there cannot be anything different from the Atma because the Atma is the basis of it all. So that is why it's a very dangerous thing to say that I am the witness to everything. The witness self, the Sakshi, the Chaitanya Swarupa has to be understood in a broader sense, not in an individualized sense. That's the point. So now when we talk about Ishvara and Maya, think of the whole Jagat, the entire Jagat of all names and forms that are conceivable and not conceivable by us. All of this has its basis in the Atma. But just as an individual Sukshma Sharira lights up in the light of this Atma alone, self revealing Atma, the individual takes on the individual sense. The same with the entire Jagat and the whole Maya Rupa of the Jagat and all this panoply of every single name and form, imaginable and unimaginable, all of that also lights up and has its own astitva. And that totality, which is having its basis in Atma, that totality is is Ishvara. And Ishvara cannot have any avidya. Ishvara cannot have avidya because the total knowledge alone is Ishvara. In fact, the whole Jagat is a manifestation of Ishvara's knowledge. And here, what is Ishvara? Ishvara is nothing but Atma. But the difference here that we talk about technically, and that's why Pujya Sabri doesn't get into this too much, frankly. He doesn't get because why are we creating a distinction between Atma and Ishvara? See, everything, you are never going to ever be a disjointed Atma that is separate from the world. The world is always going to be there. There is no such thing as a separate Atma. Because the basis of the world is the Atma. You don't destroy the world to reveal the Atma. You don't have to go to sleep to reveal the Atma. You don't have to enter Samadhi to reveal the Atma. Pujya Sabji says it very beautifully. What he says is that allow the mind to wander in the garden of Ishvara. Every single object that you perceive is Ishvara. Wherever you go, you bump into Ishvara because Ishvara is all that there is. There can be nothing outside of Ishvara. And when you recognize that, then you see that you're accounting for this world of names and forms. You see, a lot of Vedanta teachers make this mistake. What they do is they discount the entire Jagat. They treat the Jagat as a ye sab mithya, ye sab maya, this is all non-existent. It's all an illusion. But what happens to a person who's not well put together here and who's not well put together in their life and who doesn't have a certain amount of confidence and security and self-worth? And you tell this person that, by the way, you are worthless is okay, I don't care, but this whole world itself is worthless, it doesn't exist. How will that person ever grow? You cannot grow through the Atma. You can only grow through Ishvara because the Atma is uninvolved. It is you know it has no transaction, and growth only happens through a transaction. You need either somebody in your life like a guru or a mentor or an elder or somebody, whoever it is, who can take your hand and help you grow. And the greatest person who can help you grow here, the greatest entity is Ishvara. Because here Ishvara is all that there is. And that connection that you have with Ishvara, which says that wherever I point at Ishvara because Ishvara is not anywhere to be found because Ishvara is everything that I find. That is Ishvara. Then the next step is not difficult. That's what Puja Samji says. Then you just have to ask the next question, that what is the truth of Ishvara? That is the Atma. But if you bypass Ishvara and you say that, oh, I don't care for this Ishvara and all, I just want to talk about the Atma, then what will happen is that the person who's supposed to grow, who's supposed to relate to a higher entity, to through grow through devotion, through some bhakti, through some karma yoga, all of these things will be stunted, and the person will have to make a conceptual leap, but not truly believing it, but just a very abstract conceptual understanding that oh everything is the Atma and all, but I am miserable inside, but everything else is the Atma. The miserable person has to first relate to Ishvara. And through that relationship with Ishvara, the miserable person is no longer miserable. And the person who is no longer miserable is now contemplative. And that contemplative person can engage into deeper inquiry and unfold the truth of the self from the Guru. Not by oneself, from the Guru. Now, so coming back to this Ishvara, when we say that Maya's intellect, how can Maya's intellect know itself as Brahman? See, let's ask a more general question. Forget Ishvara, forget Jiva, forget all these things. Who is making the inquiry? If anybody wants to volunteer and answer, who is asking who am I over here?
I think uh, that could probably have an answer at different levels, right? So, at a very gross level, it's just me, this collection of bodily materials that's asking the question. But as we inquire, that answer can change.
No, I think it's the Jiva, the individual Atma, that is asking the question.
The person who is asking the question, the place where the question comes from, is the same place where the ignorance is there. Question comes
Right,
from ignorance. The question
right.
comes from the place, it begins from the place where the avidya resides. Okay. Now that question, who am I? The ignorant person is asking that question. The ignorant person, which is the person who does not know the truth of the self, is asking, who am I? And it is that person, that place where avidya resides, whatever that place is. And I'm being abstract for a reason here, because it doesn't matter. Some people say that place is the Antakarana, some people say it is the Karana Sharira. It doesn't matter. There are different theories there. Uh, the place where avidya resides, that is where the answer also takes place. And let's be clear that it is the buddhi that is making this inquiry, because avidya is also having its locus in the buddhi from this perspective, from the perspective of the individual. Of course, if you go deeper, then ultimately avidya has its locus in the karana sharira, because it is maya. In fact, avidya is maya. So the ultimate locus of avidya is also Brahman. The truth of avidya is also Atma. Isn't that beautiful? The truth of the avidya is also Atma, just as the truth of Vidya is also Atma. Vidya is a certain understanding where things fall into place. Avidya results in confusion where things are not falling into place. There is a certain confusion around it. But the truth of both confusion and clarity is also the Atma. So the place of inquiry, or the place from which the inquiry stems, that is avidya. It's coming from avidya. And this avidya is manifesting in the form of this jiva. It is avidya that is bringing the sukshma, sthula, everything together, the karma and everything. This whole composite body is resulting from avidya. But that avidya itself has to be removed. And that avidya has to be removed through a certain vritti, because the avidya bubbles in the form of a vritti. That I don't know is a vritti. I don't know. I know that I don't know, right? You're not ignorant that I don't know. You know that you don't know. And therefore, you know that it is a vritti. That I don't know is a vritti. And when something is known, that also becomes a vritti. The knowledge vritti cuts the avidya vritti. Knowledge comes, avidya goes. Knowledge goes, no. Knowledge is only there because there was never ignorance to begin with. The avidya was only a non recognition, not an absence of knowledge. It was a non recognition. That is very important. Knowledge is not created. That is why we use a certain word discovery. Knowledge is not created. Avidya is as though covering this vidya. But a jnana vritti bumps away the ajnana vritti, and what remains in the wake of both of these vrittis disappearing is nothing but who I am. Because knowledge does not reveal an object like a phone when we talk about the Atma. Knowledge reveals myself to who I am by not creating anything new, but bumping away the misapprehensions that I assumed to be myself. I don't have to create anything new here. Like you learn a new subject matter like some quantum physics or whatever, that you are creating new configurations in the way you think, and you are gaining a certain knowledge. Over here what you're doing is you are revealing yourself to who you are, but here the self is not revealed to the Atma. The Atma cannot be a knower, and the Atma cannot be revealed as an object of knowledge either. The Atma is not the one who is learning Vedanta. The one who is learning Vedanta is the conglomerate jiva that is resulting from this avidya, and that avidya is bubbling up in the jiva in the sense of I don't know, I am confused, I am small, I'm insecure, I'm limited, I am finite, I'm useless, I'm worthless, I'm uh, a blemish on humanity. All of those things, all a result of avidya, because the locus of who I am is not clear. Huh.
So even though the question arises from avidya, it still is valuable to ask the question in order to uh, discover that knowledge. Is that right?
Yes, because if a person does not ask this question, does not mean that avidya is not there. In fact, there are certain psychological blocks for that person that has prevented the person from making a deep inquiry. Therefore, it is actually a blessing for that avidya to be recognized, for some light to be shown on that avidya, which takes the form of I don't know, I would like to know, I have a question, I'm confused. So there's a certain recognition there, there's a certain alertness and a certain level of chitta shuddhi that is required to even say that I don't know. And to know that I don't know itself is a form of knowledge. That's beautiful, because I know that I don't know. Some people don't know that they don't know. Some people know that they don't know. And some people know. So now when it comes to the Atma, see, everything else you recognize as an object. I recognize this phone as an object. The object forms a certain vritti in my mind. Phone object forms a phone vritti, which gives rise to what you call phone knowledge. And therefore, phone is known to the knower, that is, whoever I am. It is known to me. In the case of the Atma, it is very different, because the Atma does not come in the form of a certain vritti form. It is a formless vritti, which is just a way of putting it that it is not really a vritti, but it is a recognition. It is a recognition. But you can call it a vritti because is in it is encapsulating, or rather, that it is encapsulated in this shabda, in this mahavakya. The mahavakya is the capsule, it is the vehicle that carries a certain equation, a certain recognition. It's just a vehicle. The Mahavakya has a certain vritti if you look at it as a Mahavakya and not the content of the Mahavakya. Does that make sense? Tattvamasi has a certain form. Tat is a certain form. Tvam is a certain form. Asi is a certain form. It has a certain grammar associated with it. There are certain shabdas associated with it. There's a certain vocabulary there involved. There's a certain recognition of that vocabulary, that it's Sanskrit Bhasha. So you see, Tattvamasi is a capsule. But what's inside the capsule is the medicine. The medicine is the Mahavakya Artha, not the Shabda. The Artha is the recognition. The recognition of the Artha is contained in the Mahavakya capsule. You open the capsule, inside it is the meaning. The meaning is the relationship between the self and the whole. And here, this relationship is not a relationship that creates a certain connection, sambandha. Every relationship is a sambandha. You have a family tree: father, mother, child. Family tree: child, child, grandchild, and you can create a family tree. In this Mahavakya, the relationship is not Atma Brahman. Atma is Brahman. It is an equation, not a relationship. It is saying that this is the same. It is a recognition. Therefore, there is no new concept that is created. Rather, the concepts that I was harboring, which were limiting, which were debilitating, which were steeped in avidya, those are knocked away in the wake of this Mahavakya Upadesha that delivers the goods of the Artha, Mahavakya Artha. Not the Mahavakya Shabda, the Mahavakya Artha. That is the atom bomb that is dropped. But when it explodes, there is only light, and that light is the light of the self because there is nothing other than the self. It reveals that, hey, bhai, you are that. That you are. What is that? All of which you studied all of these years in Vedanta, that's what I'm talking about. In a flash, it's a flash. That meaning becomes clear. Until that meaning becomes clear, one has to continue to do Shavanam and Mananam. Primarily Shavanam, because the clarity with which, see, suppose somebody says Tattvamasi. If you have to pause and you to think about those different components of Tattvamasi, ki what is that, what is Tattvamasi, if you have to think about it, it means the clarity is not there because that abhyasa has not been done. The moment somebody says Tattvamasi, the meaning has to flash. It has to flash in one's mind. Then it is clear. And as one remains rooted to that meaning, at some point, it becomes one's identity that this is who I am. And this is not what I have studied. This is who I am. There's one thing as saying that, oh, I have studied about the Atma. There's another thing to say that I am this Atma. And I don't just mean by the use of words, but with a deep conviction that this Atma, that I am. That is when the Mahavakya Upadesha has taken place. That is when the avidya is rendered, it's eliminated, it's gone, it's useless.
The psychological blocks to inquiry, is that also a result of some karma and all that?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything that bubbles up in the Antakarana and that bubbles up as the body and that bubbles up as your environment and as the people that you like and as the people that you dislike, it's all a result of karma, prarabdha karma. Very beautiful it is. It's beautiful, and it's also important because that's why today a doctor will examine the body for certain diseases, and the guru will examine the mind for certain diseases that we have, and a psychologist will also do that for that matter. Of course, the difference between the psychologist and the guru is the psychologist is here to help you deal with your functional issues about life. When it comes to relationship issues, about identity issues, about self-worth and things like that, and good habits, which is very very helpful as well. But the guru will knock away the very notion that I am somebody who needs help. The one who needs help is the one who feels small. The one who feels small can be helped. But the one who feels small will feel a little better when they are helped. And when they feel better, they will be ready to actually approach Vedanta with an open mind. And that is why one should not discount the use of, something like if a person let's say, if you've lost a loved one or something of that sort, and it's tough to get over it or it's tough to come to grips with reality again, seek help. Seek help. You can't just say that no, Vedanta is enough, because for some people it might be. I'm not saying it's not, but some people may require a little bit of analysis. Let's say, if there is a loved one in one's life who has been the whole and soul for this person, and that is the person whom one has depended upon completely, and their whole sense of identity and well-being and self-worth has come from relating to that person. And if that person is no more, you can't suddenly jump into Vedanta at that point. It won't work. It will only be conceptual. I say this because I know a lot of people who have interacted with in the last 14 years, in this journey, where sometimes people come to Vedanta at the wrong time. Now, I'm not saying that Vedanta requires a right time. Every time is the right time for Vedanta. But if you say that only Vedanta and nothing else, only Vedanta but no Karma Yoga, only Vedanta but no healthy relationships, only Vedanta but I can eat non-vegetarian food and I can do everything else, then it will not work. You have to have the lifestyle that supports the vision of the truth. Because Satya, which is the truth of the self, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, that truth, that absolute existence, requires to live a life of relative truth also. Satya Vachanam, Satya, Karmam, Satya, all of these things, Dharmam Chara, Satyam Vada, Shastra talks about it. If that life of truth is not led, if that life of consistency and integrity is not lived, then Vedanta will not work. It will only remain, this scholastic approach. A lot of people can scholastically speak about Vedanta, but true Vedanta has to come from deep conviction that this is who I am. That is Vedanta. So, to analyze this question a little further, so Maya, how can Maya know itself as Brahman? See, the place where knowledge takes place, it's coming from Avidya. Ishvara doesn't need to know itself as Brahman, because for knowledge to take place for a jiva, see here there's a certain limited construct that you call the Antakarana. The Antakarana is mired in avidya. Ishvara has no avidya. I have put this, I was thinking about it once, that we say Maya and avidya are reflections of each other. One is the macro, the other is the micro. But why? If we add all of the avidyas together, then Ishvara should be a Maha Avidya, no? Like completely, totally ignorant, big ignorance. But that is not true. Because, I had a nice little example here, okay? Suppose some of you speak Tamil, right? I don't. I speak Gujarati, some of you don't. You are ignorant about Tamil or Gujarati, I am ignorant about Tamil. Anand, you speak Punjabi, Hindi.
No, no, I'm a Tamil.
You're Tamil, okay, you're Tamil, okay. So, chalo, you just live in Punjab or Delhi area. Okay. Assume that you are a Punjabi. So, you speak Punjabi, these guys speak Tamil, I speak Gujarati. Each of us is ignorant about the domain of the other person. But collectively, we know 3 languages plus English plus whatever else amongst us. Okay. Now, if you add up our knowledge together, is our avidya getting added or is our knowledge getting added? What's actually getting added? Avidya doesn't get added. Avidya
Yes.
gets eliminated. My vidya will eliminate your avidya and vice versa.
Mhm.
But avidya will not add up. But rather, now if you think about it, every single jiva, the whole jagat, the whole of Hiranyagarbha, where all of knowledge is contained, will there be a trace of avidya there? No. It will only be pure shining knowledge. That is one very vyavaharik example, simple way to look at it. But if you want to look at it in a deeper way, Hiranyagarbha is the source of knowledge. And every single individual Sukshma Sharira, is only a little spore connected on this underlying carpet which is Hiranyagarbha. If one's Antakarana is pure enough, if one's Nishtha is strong enough, if one's Shraddha is robust enough, if your focus and if your attention are drawn to the source as the self, Hiranyagarbha will not get bypassed. At some point, you will make a connection with the universal mind also. At some point. And you will see things and you will know things without knowing it. Okay, I'll say one more thing. This is an object. Specs. I am the subject, functionally speaking. Okay, not as Atma or anything. Subject, object. The object requires a means of knowledge to know it. Right? Eyes or ears or whatever it may be. An object requires a means of knowledge. But do you require a means of knowledge to know something that is not separate from you? You don't. So, for example, suppose something is, uh, suppose I feel sad or I feel angry. The moment the anger thought or the sadness thought bubbles up, it is known to me immediately. I don't require a means of knowledge to do it, right? It is known. It is lit up by that individual Sakshi Chaitanya. It is lit up. But if you have to tell me how you feel, I require this Shabdam, Pramana. I need to listen to what you have to say for me to know what you are feeling. I require a means of knowledge for that. I don't need a means of knowledge to know how I feel. I need a means of knowledge for you to communicate how you feel. Ishvara does not require to be taught Vedanta. Ishvara doesn't require this knowledge to be revealed because the source of all of this knowledge itself is resting in Ishvara. Therefore, just as my thoughts are so evident to me, this knowledge is nothing but it is evident to Ishvara. It is natural to Ishvara. In fact, Ishvara's thoughts alone constitute the world. My thought constitutes a dream, right? Ishvara's thoughts, this world can be likened to Ishvara's vritti. That is why you call Ishvara Shashti. My dream is a Jiva Shashti. That I think that you are a very selfish person. I don't want to speak to you again. Is my Jiva Shashti projected upon your individuality? It is my projection. Psychologists will also say the same thing. You are projecting this projection. When I project it onto people, then I get disturbed. And when I project it as a dream, then I enter a dream state. But that projection is outwards and it is inwards. I am creating a Jiva Shashti. Ishvara creates Ishvara Shashti. Ishvara's thoughts as though Hiranyagarbha, no? Ishvara, I'm not talking about some abstract, some person sitting behind the clouds. Here, Ishvara is totality. The movement within Hiranyagarbha gives rise to this whole Jagat, including all of these processes like Panchikaranam and grossification and whatnot. That is Ishvara Shashti. And part of Ishvara Shashti is the Jiva. And the Jiva itself is capable of Jiva Shashti on top of Ishvara Shashti. But Jiva Shashti is also within Ishvara Shashti. So Ishvara does not need to know Vedanta because all of Vedanta and all the Vedas and all the mantras are contained within this totality which is Ishvara. And just as my thoughts don't require to be revealed to me by somebody else or through means of knowledge, the Vedas don't require to be revealed to Ishvara. Rather, it is Ishvara who does the revealing. Okay, so that is answering the question. Uh, how can a conscious Maya entity know itself as Brahman? Because knowledge is already there. There's no revelation over here. Now, if Maya is Jada, does Ishvara know one Swarupa as Atma? Yes. Because knowledge is already there. The fact that a single Jiva would have this answer is obvious that Ishvara will also know the answer. Okay. Now, uh, the next question.
Prashantji,
Huh.
I have a question related to the dream topic that you had referred to
Huh.
earlier. So, if there are, let's say, two people in my dream, uh, now these two people are essentially me, right? So, it's basically me manifesting as two people in my dream. Now, I'm just thinking of a situation where, let's say, in the dream, the second person actually told me that he told me about the reality that the two people are actually the same. Like, let's say in the dream, the person was uh, he was aware of this truth, let's say Vedanta, and he told me that this is actually uh, you and I are the same reality. Now, in the dream, I can know from him. I can do similar mananam and shravanam in the dream itself. So in the dream, I can develop the understanding or the knowledge that this reality is just me. Now, it's only when I wake up, I actually live that truth or I realize that truth, right? So when I actually wake up from the dream, uh, there is a realization that what I knew in the dream was the truth. So in that way, I'm segregating like understanding and realization as two different things in this context, right? Understanding was when I actually knew in the dream that this is an underlying reality which is the same, the two people are the same, and realizing is when I actually woke up. So along similar lines, is it so when in now in talking about the waking state, along similar lines, if I'm like doing a lot of mananam and shravanam, I develop the understanding that all of this is basically the reality of Ishvara. So that is the understanding part of it. Now, what about the realization part of it? Will it come at the time?
I would not segregate it that way. That is the problem. Because in this dream, let's take the dream example. And Pujya Swamiji has given this example before. In the dream, you have a dream guru and a dream student inside the dream. The dream guru teaches Tattvamasi to the dream student. The dream student itself, in the context of that dream, the Vidya is gone. There is no such thing as I understand the dream and then I realize when I wake up, because that is another vocabulary we are introducing into the picture. But as far as the dream is concerned, the person in the dream itself has woken up to the reality, not woken up as in waking up, but has woken up to the
Okay.
reality that everything that I perceive in this dream is nothing other than myself. It is me only. And you are also me, and this dream mountain is also me, and everything is me. I have Sarvatma Bhava in the dream itself. The knowledge is complete and whole in the dream itself. There's nothing that's lacking inside that person, in that dream individual. That dream individual is a jnani. So there is no segregation here, because the moment that avidya, that who am I ka avidya is gone, the there's no such thing as understanding versus realization. Because see, Pujya Sabji never uses those words, realization and all, because it creates a certain extra step in our mind that something has to be done on top of this. That first
So
I
you
understood, and now I have to realize on top of that, and that's a separate process. There's no such separate process. The removal
okay.
of avidya is knowledge.
So are you saying that for a dream Jivan Mukta, a person who's realized the truth in the dream, for him waking would make no difference? Waking up would make no difference,
The problem is that in this dream analogy, there is something to wake up from. When we
right?
talk about this avastha, Jagrat avastha, where knowledge is gained, there is no equivalent of waking up to a different reality where you wake up. That somebody is sleeping in a different reality, and this dream we are waking up from that. That equivalent is not there. You see, that is the difference. Because what happens is, here the waking up is allegorical. It is a metaphorical waking up. Here I am awake to the reality that is. There's no another reality where I'm sleeping snugly in bed and then I wake up from that and now I have to realize something that is gained in this reality. No, I am a jnani here and now. So going back to the dream example, if the dream person has been given the dream upadesha of the dream mahavakya, then that person is a jnani there and there. There is nothing extra that needs to be done. The waking up is extending the example too far. Because here in this version, otherwise what happens is it becomes an infinite regress. Because at what point do you say the dream person will wake up into another dream, into another dream, into another dream, into another dream? Where is the waker? Where is the final waker? It's an infinite regress. So this example is that there is only pratibhashikam, which is a dream. The dream is the jiva shashti. This whole jagat where we are interacting and having this conversation is Ishvara shashti, but there is no shashti to wake up from. Rather, here the waking up is in drishti, not in the pratiti, which is that the pratiti, the appearance that this world is a differentiated world of multiple names and forms, can continue, but the drishti is that the underlying truth of it all, the self of it all, the truth of it all, the adhisthana of it all is nothing but myself alone, and I am the Sarvatma. And that is the drishti. So with that drishti, I can continue to interact with the as though pratitis, because pratiti means as though reality, as though person, as though dreamer, as though dream, as though world, as though Ishvara, as though myself, as though everything. Because the only thing that is not as though is the self alone. And this whole world is nothing but a world of names and forms that is having its basis in the self. So that waking up is the drishti, and to wake up from the pratiti while still perceiving the pratiti.
Okay, so can I say that the crux of the matter is knowing is realizing?
Don't use the word realizing. See, because why do we have to qualify it with an extra word? Why can't we simply
Because,
say knowing,
so
knowledge?
because I use the word realization also uh, because of the exact meaning of it, right? Like realization itself means that you realize something that's been there all along or something you've missed all along. So, in that sense, in the literal meaning of the word realization, I use it in that context. And so, my question is in that context, I'm not using it in a very loose sense, in specifically that sense. Knowing is it's the same as realization that, oh, it's been there all along. This truth has been there all along.
You can put it that way, but I would still not want to qualify it as anything different than saying that this realization it's like, I had the car keys in my pocket, but I realized that I had left them on the sofa or whatever. See, there is a knowledge that has already taken place, and that I forgot, and then somewhere subconsciously something bubbles up, and then I realize it. This is different. So again, I don't want to get technical, but I'm just saying that the reason Pujaswamiji is so specific about the use of words, and you'll never see him use self-realization as an expression, is because self-knowledge is sufficient. What is knowledge? Knowledge is that which is firm and which is embedded. Knowledge does not have any looseness associated with it. So knowledge is not the same thing as oh किसी ने बोला मैंने सुन लिया. That knowledge. No. Knowledge means that it has to be firm. Knowledge means that it has to be integrated. And therefore the sense that you use when you use the word realization is already contained in the word Atmajnanam or in the word expression self-knowledge. Self-knowledge means there is no looseness associated. It is firm, it is tight, it is unshaking, and it will never go away. It is there, and it has destroyed avidya in its wake. So therefore, we don't create an extra word, because then my question would be that okay, suppose there is something called realization separate from knowledge. Then what happened when knowledge took place? And what extra process was required for that realization to happen? No extra process. Avidya is there, fact. Avidya is no longer there when knowledge takes place, also fact. What is a Mahajnani? Also fact. Then what is the realization part? You see, so it creates an extra conceptual burden that we have to carry then. And then one will think, okay, पहले तो मेरे को knowledge gain करने का है. I have to gain this knowledge, and then I have to realize on top of it. No. Knowledge takes place. In the wake of the knowledge, avidya is gone, and one is a jnani. But who is the jnani? The jnani is the jnani from the standpoint of the ajnani. Because for the jnani, there is no jnani, and for the jnani, there is no ajnani. For the jnani, there is only Brahman. So even words like jnani and ajnani are from the standpoint of the one who does not know. But from the standpoint of the one who knows, there is nothing other than oneself, including everybody else. So that's why, like, we try to narrow down our, our focus on a specific set of words which are complete and contain all of it, all of the information. Otherwise, it may create intellectual barriers and a certain FOMO to, okay, now I've done this, now I need to do that. That Puju Sabji says it's already complete only. What is there to do now? That you are the whole is a fact. Suppose I say you are the whole. You heard it. You are the whole. You heard it again. You are the whole. Now what are you going to do to realize it? So there is a certain pratibandhaka which might as though be blocking that knowledge. How do you remove that pratibandhaka? Actually, nothing needs to be done to remove it. If you recognize that there might be certain pratibandhakas which are not allowing this knowledge to take place, what do? I'll share a couple of things. Let me close this, because this is a very niche way of looking at it. I don't want to send it out into the world for scrutiny, because that's the way I approach it, and it's not possibly spoken about, widely. So I'll close the presentation over here. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Okay, let me close the recording.